interoperability, really passing data between Inventor and AutoCAD Electrical. So I've got my Coca-Cola Classic sitting at my left hand here, the mouse in my right. So we should be in good shape for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so. So if you have not met me, this is me. If you haven't seen me in a while, there's a lot more white in my beard than there used to be. So my name's Caleb Funk. I've been here at ImagineIt for over 20 years. Worked in a whole variety of different roles. I have done implementations and training, project management, people management, just consulting, just across the board. I have not been on the admin side. It's about the only thing I haven't done in ImagineIt, but I've been involved with a lot of the other pieces of it. And so the fun part of that is with all of that experience, with all of that time, I've picked up a lot of different things as I've gone along, whether it's, ideas within the software, concepts, different ways that we can control, edit, and update things. And that's kind of what I want to share. All that time, I focused on the manufacturing tools. There was a time early on that I used MicroStation and worked with the Florida Department of Transportation. And there was a moment when I knew Revit fairly well. But most of that time, it's been 22 years now, has really been focused on the manufacturing tools. So I go back to AutoCAD Electrical before it was AutoCAD Electrical, and it's still via wiring diagram, Inventor when it first came out. So it's been neat to see these products through the years mature and the different abilities that they have and how they kind of come together here. So that's a little bit about me. ImagineIt Technologies, most likely you've heard of us if you're on this call, but we are Autodesk's largest reseller in North America. We say 40 plus years of experience. It's across the company. It's not adding up the individuals. We have a pretty large team of technical experts that we have, and I'm just one of them, right? So we've got, and I'm not even the smart one. I ask lots of questions of lots of people, right? I have the ability to kind of pull from being here long enough, I can pull from a lot of different areas and ask a lot of different people. But a large part of what we do is work with partners like you in a whole variety of different ways. Well, the big thing we're looking for is the things we're all looking for. How do we improve quality, reduce costs, boost productivity, become more agile? How do we innovate what we're doing? And a lot of times that's going to run one of those different ways. It's either training people, it's changing processes, or updating, changing, adapting technology, right? That's really where all of that comes together and how it's one of those, if not all three, are going to be affected. So that's something over the last even 5 years, we've seen a change with how things have, how those areas have affected different people. Of course, when COVID hit, suddenly we're figuring out how does everyone work from home? How do we collaborate effectively? How do we take things that we took for granted in the office and push it out there? That affected every single one of those. Now that people are coming back in the office, we say, well, gosh, we've got all these great lessons learned. How do we continue that? Again, it's those key areas that we're looking to work with. We do that by providing consulting and professional solutions. And it's a whole, like I mentioned, some of the things that I've done in the past, as well as some that are new-ish to us. And it's sometimes time fades for me, but to give you some examples is, the idea of we're now doing some more and more CAD management where people are offloading, whether it's managing their vault, managing their libraries, becoming BIM managers, they've offloaded that to us. Dealing with CAM services, CFD simulation, content development. I was working with a client where we needed to create a whole bunch of information. It ended up being in Revit and how we could put that together. Of course, data management, it's an area that I really work in. Implementation services, process automation has become huge. The idea of taking an existing process, whether it's a design, whether it is I want someone to be emailed automatically once this is completed, those processes we can capture and automate. Again, it could be CAD process, it could be an internal process like I just described. And product lifecycle management, where we're, again, managing processes. That's part of the process automation. Software development is part of that. And reality capture, I skipped over that one there. That's really the idea of being able to laser scan, have those things. So we've got this whole range of services. And I'm kind of a front end for some of these where I know a little bit about everything, and I talk to a lot of people, and sometimes I'll go, you know what, we need to talk to someone about, if we're looking at reality capture, we're going to get a reality capture expert. If it's content development, we need to talk to someone else. But a lot of times I'll be the one that you're talking to from a technical side. I really enjoy that role. I enjoy being kind of filling that gap and helping people understand how we can assist in some of the different areas that we have. So what we're going to look at today is some of these different areas within here. This is kind of just right off of the invite, if you're looking at that, how these link together and how we can manage the changes between them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AutoCAD Electrical and Inventor, just give a sense of where they come from, how the tools work, so we know what we're getting into. And then the core of this comes down to these electromechanical exchange files. And I'm going to say electromechanical quite a few more times today, and we'll see how many times I mess it up. Once we have this exchange file set up, we can sync the libraries between the two products. And it is an actual sync, which is pretty cool. It's not just an import-export. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then ultimately, we want to be able to manage the changes between the two. If I change it on one end, we should see it update, push to the other, and we have that there. So AutoCAD Electrical, let's talk about that just for a second. And AutoCAD Electrical, I mentioned that I've been around before it was AutoCAD Electrical. I started out when it was still via wiring diagram. It was a completely separate tool that you purchased, runs on top of AutoCAD, so AutoCAD was within it. But the way that AutoCAD currently works is if you purchased AutoCAD today, you would have what they would call the AutoCAD with advanced tool sets. And there's all of these different tool sets within there. The one we're concerned with is the AutoCAD Electrical tool set. That's just part and parcel of it. It's a whole set of tools within the AutoCAD. And the thing about this is each one of these tools, every single one, it's still an AutoCAD file that it creates. So it's not creating a completely separate format. It's not creating anything like that. It's still a DWG, kind of a standard format that we have for that. So AutoCAD Electrical is the one that we'll talk about and focus on here. AutoCAD Electrical is a purpose-built 2D design tool. So this is purpose-built for electrical controls design. That's really why it exists. Via wiring diagram, via WD was wiring diagram, right? That's what it was all about, was the idea of creating these wiring diagrams. So we've got symbol libraries that are part of it, automatic wire tagging and numbering, electrical specific drafting features. So if I drop in a push button, it's going to clean up the break as it goes in. And it contains all of this in a project. So it uses a project, and there could be 100 drawings, there could be 200 drawings in this project. It understands that they are in a single container, that they need to work together, and we have project-specific controls. The cool thing about it, in my mind, is it's still 100% AutoCAD. So there's nothing within AutoCAD Electrical, there's nothing I can create that changes it from being a standard AutoCAD DWG. So if I was talking to a company this morning and they have some of their team members who are looking to use AutoCAD Electrical, and one of the concerns was, well, gosh, this other part of the team's using AutoCAD. Does that mess anything up? The great thing is it doesn't. It's a complete AutoCAD file. It's using lines, it's using blocks, it's using attributes in a pretty intelligent way. Okay, so it's a pretty smart way that it's leveraging those, but it's really, when it's done, it's an AutoCAD file. So on the other side that we'll be taking a look at is Inventor. So here we have 3D mechanical design. And a way to think about Inventor is it's a really powerful tool for automating advanced geometry. So that advanced geometry could be sheet metal. That could be tube and pipe, where I'm putting in a route and I want to put in all my fittings and all my rigid tube that comes in as part of that. It could be some complex geometry that I need to create, and I just can begin to take a look at what geometry do I need to remove from this to make this work, whatever it would be. It's a really powerful 3D tool. We can create drawings with it, but the concept is it's a 3D mechanical design tool. Now, it is not AutoCAD, right? So AutoCAD Electrical, I said, hey, it's 100% AutoCAD. Anything I can do in AutoCAD, I can do over here. Great, powerful tool for that. But Inventor is a completely separate kernel, and it has been from the beginning. It's a completely separate design idea. It is really tightly integrated with AutoCAD, though, in a variety of ways. whether it's sharing blocks between them, whether it is opening Inventor. Inventor can create a DWG. It's not like AutoCAD Electricals, it is different, but it can, AutoCAD can view that. And the big thing that we're going to see today is these specific tools for linking this information together. And before I get into the, down to the brass tacks of putting those together, I just thought this was really interesting. This is something I came across several years ago. A friend of mine shared it with me, and I do not know which friend. So if it's you, please let me know. But when a mechanical designer looks at something like this, and I'm, in this case, I've got a this specialty machine that I have in here. A lot of times, and this is my world, this is where I come from, this is what I tend to look at, this is where my mind goes. Okay, cool. We've got these machined components. We've got some tube steel here for the base. There's a manifold down there, tube and pipe. There's a motor, hydraulic ram. I'm seeing all of the components that are going to be stamped out, milled, machined, that we need to create a CNC program for. That's what I'm thinking of when I see something like this. Now, anytime we have something that moves, like a hydraulic ram, like we've got a manifold where something is flowing in, whether it's air or it's hydraulic fluid. But anytime we have things that move, we need electricity, air, or fluid to move them. And that means on the other end, looking at the exact machine, electrical designers are going to see something very different. It's the components that they're concerned with: limit switches, pilot lights, e-stops, control panels, the operator interface, how these different things interact. So it makes sense that we would want to share the information from one to the other, because this is effectively going to be designed twice. We're going to have a design as a mechanical design. We're going to have a design of this reflects the electrical side. And a lot of times we need to share that information back and forth, where how does this link together? And actually we may have the same component. We might have a pilot light, we might have a switch or a connector, and that connector is the same in my electrical design, and it's the same connector in my mechanical design. That's what this is all about, how we can tie that together so that we have the information we need. Now, this has been around for a while, where in the past, we could go through and link these together really with an import-export is what it was. And typically, we would export things from AutoCAD Electrical and import them into Inventor. So we could export, for example, a wire list from AutoCAD Electrical and import that wire list into Inventor, so that we understand how these components wire together. That was, it's been around for a while. I can't even remember which release that came out in, but it's been out for a good while. So that's something that worked, and if that's fine. It's a viable workflow. It's still there. You can continue to use it today. The problem we have with the idea of an export and an import is the data is stale immediately. As soon as I export something, it doesn't matter if I export a PDF, it doesn't matter if I export a parts list. Once it leaves the parent product, we now have information that does not, or potentially does not, reflect current reality. Okay? So what can we do? We can export again, we can re-import. That's definitely possible, but it's not a live link. So several years ago, Autodesk moved to a new type of sharing within here, and that's the Electromechanical Exchange. And the Electromechanical Exchange allows me to set up a share between these. And what I'm passing isn't geometry, what I'm passing is information. And I can then, instead of exporting it and importing it and running the risk of it being stale, I can use the Electromechanical Exchange to always have a live link to that information. So I'm going to walk through those steps. I'm going to set up an electromechanical link. We'll take the information from one, push it into the other, see how those things line up. Okay? So before I do that, I just want to point out a couple of things that'll be created as part of this. What you're going to see is a series of files. Really, the only one we're concerned with is the EMX, and that's the Electromechanical Exchange. That's what the X stands for, Electromechanical Exchange. This is when you get down to it, it's an XML file. and it says, here's the paths to the information. It says, this is where it is, and it knows how these fit together. It creates some other files that are within there. Those files, you probably will not see them. I'd be surprised if you ever concerned yourself with them. But I just want to point out, it's interesting. One is a snapshot of the data from AutoCAD Electrical. That's the one called Logical. And another one is a snapshot with the information from Inventor. So it's basically a inverse of each other. These get created automatically by the Exchange. You do not have to concern yourself too much with it. It exists, it's there. We'll go see it in a minute. What I want to do is I'm going to bring up my desktop here, and I'll pull up my Inventor and kind of start working through some of the information that I was talking about, being able to get down to viewing that and controlling those different pieces. And here I am. I've actually got my electromechanical link set up all ready to go. And that's kind of where I'll start within here, is I want to set up that link it to an electrical file, and then pull the information from the electrical file into here. So before I get too far into that, I just want to point out some things about this particular assembly. This is a car seat, so it's a power car seat, and I have connectors that are in here. Get over here and see this one. So I've got a connector. It's already there. It's attached to a little control unit that I have. And then holding this whole thing together, here's a connector here on this motor, a connector on this motor, a connector on this motor. And then I have here an existing wire harness, and it's empty. I have no wiring to this point associated to it. So I've got these different components. Actually, I don't want that one, I want this one. I've got these different components, and I can go take a look at some different information about these components within here. I'll go down here to my harness. So I've got my harness that's part of that, and then I've got the components themselves that make this up. And these components, there's a lot of information in here that I can go take a look about them, the different properties that are part of it. And we'll see this in a moment. When I start working with my Electromechanical Exchange, it will know these are going to have intelligent information associated to them. We'll be able to work with the properties of that. Before I even set up my Exchange, I do want to point out, if you've never worked with the harness that I have here within Inventor, I'm going to put some, let's flip it this way, it's a little easier for me to see. There we go. I'm going to come along and I'm going to put in some additional harness points within here. So I can edit this existing harness. Right, go down and take a look at that. Actually went to the wrong level. There we go. I want to be back at this level. And I can now create segments within here. And these aren't wires yet. And I'm going to go here, and then I'll use these very handy points that I have already set up. So I just added a splice in there so it runs out, and I'll create another segment that goes off of this point, and then I'll just do the same thing up here. So what this does for me is I'm defining where these segments fit in as I take a look at this wire harness. It's running from here to here. I'm actually creating a 3D sweep. I'm just not concerning myself. I had some points that I could select, and the wire harness does that for me automatically. So that's going to be my route that I'm going to run through. What I don't have at this point is any wires within here, and I can place in wires. So I could go through and create a wire and go into my library, choose, I'll say I want a black wire, and I could go from this pin over to this pin and create a wire. So if I wanted to, I could wire this whole thing up just like that. I don't. And the reason I don't is because I've got harness data. I've got this data already over in AutoCAD Electrical, and that's where I want to go get it from. I don't want to have to worry about having it here and dealing with it from this side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and finish this. I've got my harness in place. Just spin it back to where it was. And I'm going to create my electromechanical setup. So very simple. I've got electromechanical tab. I've got electromechanical link set up. It's there's not much. There's two buttons there. We'll see location view in a moment. So I can open an existing electromechanical file, or I can create a new one. And I'm going to create a new one. So this is that EMX file that I mentioned just a moment ago. Now, the name of this file doesn't matter a whole lot. It could be the name of the project. It could be whatever I want to call it as part of this. We'll just call it Electromech right now. So it's going to create this Electromech file for me. And where I put it, again, doesn't matter a whole lot as long as both Inventor and AutoCAD Electrical can see it. Now, in my case, I'm working right here off my desktop. It's this PC. I can come in. I can look at my files. I'm going to drop it over here into my vault area, this one right here. We'll drop it in. We'll just drop it in this folder here, right? Simple enough. So I'm putting it in my vault working folder. So yeah, create that. Tells me I have to save it. Yep, that sounds good. Go ahead and save the information that I have because I did add those few pieces there. So it's working off of this project file. It's working off of this assembly. Now you'll notice it is not linked to an AutoCAD Electrical project yet. I have to go to AutoCAD Electrical and set the link up from the other side. And like a lot of things where we're establishing these sorts of links and this sort of mapping, so much of the work is done at this end. I'm going through and I'm setting up and I'm putting these different pieces together. But we'll see once it is set up, it's going to manage a lot of changes for me. It's going to have the links in place. Last thing I'll point out here is that I've got link conflict resolution preference. So when I sync between the two products, which one is correct? And I'm going to say AutoCAD Electrical. If there's a change in AutoCAD Electrical, or if I happen to edit in this one and not in that one, whatever it would be, I want to be able to say, yes, that's the one that's correct. And the AutoCAD Electrical is where the information is, which makes sense. The wire numbers, the information that we have, the catalog information, that's all coming from the electrical designer. I just need to represent it here. So it makes my life a little easier to just say, hey, we'll let them handle that. So I'm going to close that out. It's been created. We're good to go. I'm going to save this just to be safe. Now, this location view lit up now, and it's not going to do much for me yet. It's showing the different components I have, the different pins that I have, and I can look at the different properties that I can see for these different components: location, manufacturer, tag number. And these don't have a whole lot yet. I've left these kind of empty because I will be able to fill these from AutoCAD Electrical here in a moment. Like he's prompting me for that, but that's okay. So we'll see in a moment the information that I'll pull from the other side. Let me take a look at that. So my last sync was 2 minutes ago. It's not really doing anything for me right now. I'm going to go get AutoCAD Electrical. So what I have here in AutoCAD Electrical is the schematic version of what we just saw there within 3D. And I've got power for seat connector. I've got passenger seat, the main switch here. This PJ1 is the main switch with all the different connections coming off. And then it's got different motors that it can fire off from that to adjust the seat. This is what I want to link to that. So I'm going to do the AutoCAD Electrical link setup, just like I did on the other side, except I'm not creating one. I'm linking to an existing one because I already created it on the Inventor side. So that allows me to come over here and say, well, working folder, and there it is. That's the one that I had used. So now it's linking to that. It's using this particular file. Yep, that's how we want it. That's the assembly. It's all good. So now those are linked together, and here's the components I can see from Inventor, right? It has the names, it has the information, and it's currently going through there. It just did a quick sync to try and link those together. So I've got my different motors, my different information here. This knows the location of these. It does not know the location of these pieces, but I can see my Inventor components and I can see my electrical components. So the first step is completed. I've got my electrical components in one place, and I've got it linked to Inventor, so I have the other pieces. Real quick, I'm going to take a look at this component. We can see it's PJ1, its location is passenger seat, line 1 is power seat, main switch. Line 2 is main switch. So I've got all of this information here. I'm going to use that information over on the other side. So I'll save this file. And just because, I don't know, I always get nervous, I'm going to sync again. So I tend to let it sync. I tend to sync about every time I think about it. So I'll jump back over here to Inventor. So in Inventor, we'll take a look at the information that we have. So I have now all of this information for these, this PJ1 and all its connectors. So nothing is linked at this point. And that's kind of how we start out. We have to set up the links. I've set up that the data is being passed back and forth, but I have not set up yet that these link together and where these different pieces are. So I'm going to take this component and I can insert from the catalog browser. So that would mean I would use the catalog browser from AutoCAD Electrical. It's actually the same one in AutoCAD Electrical that it is in AutoCAD Electrical and Inventor use the same catalog information. So I can have my catalog linked up. So if I know it's a particular connector and I can say this is what the 3D model looks like, this is what the 2D model looks like, and I can insert those. I've already have these, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign to existing in an assembly. So I'm going to say PJ1, I picked it, yeah, there we go, is that guy right there. So it went through, and now I've got the link icon for that. So those are connected. It knows those pieces go together. I'm going to go through and assign some others. So I've got my other connectors in here. I'm just going to work through and begin assigning them into place. So I'm linking that one. Notice that they're disappearing from the list up here. These were unknowns. Now it knows how they link together and knows where these different pieces are. So I got PJ1, PJ2. We'll just go down the line, right? No reason to stop now. And I think I've got PJ4 here. I think I skipped this guy right here. Also got this one piece way at the back. Should have one other piece in there. Oh, yeah, it's going to be over here. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. So I'm signing this information in here. Went through, selected it. I know where it's at. And if I take a look, for example, at PJ1, the information is all here. It pulls that now from electrical. So it says, all right, passenger seat is here. It's got the category information. It's got my descriptions. All of that came from AutoCAD Electrical. I don't have to fill it in on this side. It's pulling it directly from there. So my location view that I have, it's showing all these pieces, it's showing that I'm beginning to link them up, and it knows how they link together and where they're at. And I could assign other information. I could, I've got, as I show the different motors through here, instead of just the connectors, I could link those. So this does, I don't really have a whole lot of wires going to these and linking these, but I could assign that and say, that's motor number 1, that's motor number 2. This is how these pieces link together. So that I've got all of it assigned to each other. The reason that I do this is I had already created this and designed it and called it out and designated it within AutoCAD Electrical. It allows me to come over here to this point and now pull this in. The other thing that I can do is I can go here to my harness and I can say, let's create connections. And it go into AutoCAD Electrical. I should. And let's see what, I'm going to save this real quick and pull the wire information from AutoCAD Electrical over to this location. And I have to be in the harness that I'm working on to create the information. Let's see, create connection. There's no remaining wires. For some reason, it's not pulling my wires right now. And this is one of those classic things where I get to say, hey, it worked earlier. But it'll pull the wire information in from this, and then I can route it into place so that I have it in here as part of this. So let me make sure. I'm trying to see if I did anything wrong. I don't think so. It should all be in place, and it should all be where I need it to be. Trying to think what I'm missing. But now we can extract that information from AutoCAD Electrical, pull it over here, and link it in. And a change in one location is going to mean a change in the other. So I mentioned a moment ago, I take a look at the electrical properties that I have here. Oh, where'd it go? I gotta be down at that level. But I can take a look at the properties that I have, and they're gonna match in both locations. So it's gonna be exactly the same, right? I've got a power for seat, that's a connector. Power for seat, that's a switch. It knows what they are and where the different information lies, where the different pieces come in. So for some reason, I'm having trouble pulling over my wires here. I'm actually just going to add in a wire here real quick, just so I have a wire associated to this. Because I want to point out how the wiring works a little bit within here. And this is what happens when I have a wire, whether I import it or whether I pull it from AutoCAD or whether I put it in just like I did here. When it starts out, it just is sitting in space. It's the shortest connection between the points. It just finds it and goes with that. What I'm going to do is use this automatic route, and I'm going to say just get any unrouted wires and run them through the nearest fitting. And it's automatically going to run it through so that it uses the appropriate information to go through and do that. So I mentioned that this link is live. We have this, it's sitting here. It's an actual, back and forth that I have between the two of them. So if I return back over to AutoCAD Electrical over here, I can take this and make a change. And if I make a change over here, we should be able to push that through so that we have the information in each location. So I'm just gonna sync this up, update it. There we go. Okay, so perfect. So it's linked. I've got my different pieces in here. So I can choose, as I look at this, I can see the different connectors, different information. I said it was this one right here. So if I take this and edit this component, it's PJ1, power main switch. We'll say main connector. I just want to have something different in here, just so it's, and then we'll save that. And I should be able to sync that up. Pushes it over and go back to Inventor. And then I'll make sure it syncs on this side. 134, we should be synced. And now I should see, matter of fact, I think I just did. I rest on it, it now says main connector. So it's pulling in the description information and syncing them up so that it's got the correct information within there. So it understands these linked together, it understands how to pull that in, and it updates the changes for me automatically as part of that. So the idea now is that I could query this. I've got it built over here in 3D. I can check for interferences. I've got the same components listed in both locations. All of my bill of materials should match up. All of my naming should match up because I have the link between the two built within there. And that's what I wanted to be able to walk through today, showing the idea of creating that EMX file, having that build the connection between the different files, and then once that's built, have it manage the information between the different files. So I am going to pause for a moment here, and I'm sure there's some questions about this and different ideas. This is it's a lot to take in all at once, and just some different ideas that are there. But we'll stop for a moment, and I'll open it up for any questions.